myself. It is so good to welcome you to Quest this morning. And this Sunday, it is really special as we are entering into and beginning a new sermon series, a short series on our values here at Quest. And this is how we are actually going to be landing the plane on our year-long theme of home. And more specifically, the last few months here at Quest, we've been diving into this sub-theme of home with others. And it fits so perfectly as we begin this fall season. Y'all, it's September. Where did the summer go? So far away. And as we're entering into this summer, as kiddos are getting back into school, as we're preparing to get into our fall rhythms, we felt like it was appropriate, and we're excited to share and to cast vision and to provide a space to remind our church, whether you've been Quester for years or you are newly checking out Quest, what are our values here as a church? What does it mean to be home with others as a community? And today, this morning, we're going to begin with this value of global presence, what it means to be connected globally to our neighbors abroad, but also as a reminder that the globe is here, coming. Those who come from all different places are our neighbors here in the Seattle area as well. And so this morning, I'm really grateful to introduce our dear brother, longtime Quester, Reverend Dr. Andy Larson. And let me just read a little bit of his bio to us this morning as a way of preparing this space. Reverend Dr. Andy Larson is a longtime Quester and peacemaker, devoted to engaging the quote-unquote other as followers of Jesus Christ, believing this is a core characteristic of true discipleship of Jesus. Andy uses his camera to build bridges of understanding between groups and to decrease social distance. His photography has appeared in the National Geographic, Christianity Today, and many other publications. He has also appeared multiple times on local television and radio programs sharing about peacemaking with Muslim communities and peacemaking in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Andy and his partner, Carrie, serve as program directors for Peace Catalyst International, equipping and mobilizing Christians for collaborative peace building across lines of difference. Their greatest passion is to hang out with Muslim friends and get people out of the pews or off of their prayer rugs, as the case may be, and into relationship with the quote-unquote the other. And so this morning, we are so humbled and we are so grateful to welcome you, Andy, to bring a word this morning. And if I can just share just personally, I've known Andy as long as I've been here at Quest for 13 years. And every time we grab coffee or grab a meal together, I'm always wanting to learn from him around this work, around peacemaking. It is not something that he talks about and he preaches. He lives this work out. And that is what I am so moved by, is your integrity in this work and in this call. And so I thank you that you are bringing us a word to both challenge us and to invite us into that space. And so can you help me welcome Reverend Dr. Andy Larson this morning?
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah. It is really, really good to be here this morning, even on this sunny weekend, when it's like, for Seattleites, it's like we want to be outside. We don't want to be in a dark room because it'll be dark real soon. Just a couple of housekeeping announcements that I need to share, because symbols are important. And sometimes people can trip over this right here. So this has the colors of the Palestinian flag. It's something that's very important to us. But I've been criticized as being, just in wearing something like this, as anti-Semitic. But I need to say and declare to you right away, right from the outset, that both Carrie and I are deeply invested in what we would call peace with justice. And there's no priority of who should be included in that. We believe that everybody should be included in that. And so we're deeply, in fact, in my early years, I visited a concentration camp in Germany just to understand the story of the Holocaust and what was happening to our Jewish ancestors and our friends and cousins. And so we have intentionally developed relationships with Jewish peacemakers, I wore this scarf last time at an interfaith rally in Olympia, and my co-partner in this, it was the multi-faith panel on spirituality, was a Jewish woman, a therapist who speaks powerfully into this space as well. So I just wanted to say that just as a beginning, that this is deep and it's important, but you need to see that we are in this space and we believe in peace with justice for everybody. Second kind of housekeeping announcement is Carrie and I have been in conversation for some time about the idea of creating a space for a larger conversation about this. Places where we can engage people from Quest and learn more, and also kind of just connect and support one another. So we are in conversations with Pastor Chloe about doing some kind of a C group around the issues that I'll be preaching about, some of the stuff that you may have heard from us in previous conversations. So stay tuned, I guess is the word I would say. And then lastly, I am deeply humbled just to be here. I've been a missionary, a cross-cultural global personnel for most of my life. I've also been a pastor. And I've been here at Quest since 2007, and it's humbling because the bench is deep, as you know, of preachers. And why would a white male approaching 70 years old have anything to say in this space? And that's a good question. So I'll just let that sit there. But I've been on a journey as a white male, grew up in an evangelical church, of deconstructing, but the word I choose, actually, that I prefer today is decolonizing the white evangelical faith. And it manifests in many ways, in very, very toxic ways, that for me, like our Jewish counterparts talking about what's happening in Gaza, they say, "Not in my name." And I, too, want to be able to say to many people, what is happening and what you see and what you taste today from evangelical brand of Christianity, especially, but it's everywhere, is not in my name. They've hijacked something. We've hijacked something. So I've been in this journey of decolonizing this sociological phenomenon, this thing that we see that manifests that's a mile wide and an inch deep, and it doesn't look like Jesus. It just doesn't. So that's part of what I'm here for and what I want to share a little bit this morning. So we do communion at 11:07, so I got to go fast here. So I'm not a staff here, but I've been a ministry partner of Quest for some time. I came here in 2007, began. The place of Quest has been also a place that has been nurturing and holding me when I was in personal crisis. Being, you don't have to do anything, Andy. You can just sit and relax and worship and be fed. And Quest has been that. It's been a place that has been healing for me in many, many important and deep ways. And then to hear the love mercy, do justice, walk humbly with God day in and day out in the body of this place and in the preaching that comes from the pulpit has been so formative and so helpful in my own journey of decolonizing my white Christianity. So it has been a very important place for us. So the sermon of or the title of my sermon, there's a subtitle here, and you go ahead and put the slide up. It's Make hummus not walls, but saving the soul of Western Christianity and all those downstream. Now that sounds kind of, like maybe, I don't know what the verb form is of hubris, but it's an act of hubris in some ways to even say that and to presuppose that white Christianity is the center. I know well that today, the center of the church, the center of Christianity has moved south and east. But I have to say, in fact, when we do pilgrimages in Palestine, we see bus loads of pilgrims from Brazil and from Argentina and from Nigeria and places they go. into the holy sites in Israel, and they keep kissing the dead stones, but they don't meet any living stones. In other words, they go and see where Jesus walked, but they don't meet or connect with Palestinians or Israelis that are immersed in a very, very difficult space. And that is because the seed of the missionaries that was planted in the soil of many of those places has borne that fruit that we see here too, in some ways. Does that make sense? Dr. Brandon, I feel like preaching, but I just don't quite have the same. Anyway, here we go. So who will save Christianity is a question I'm asking this morning. And I believe, in fact, this graffiti in this picture is on the wall of Bethlehem. It's a Banksy piece, but it is something that you feel in the soul of Palestinians. They're inviting people to make Hamas, not walls, and that really the resolution to any conflict, not just there, but anywhere. Hey, let's sit down and let's have a meal. Let's smash some of those chickpeas together, put some good olive oil in it, mix it up, and then do a cracker. It's wonderful stuff. But it's a metaphor for how we could live our lives with people we may be afraid of. It's how we could live. So who could save Christianity? I say the poets, the prophets, the artists, and let me be so bold to say this morning, the Palestinians. My method today is what I would call, it's iterative. There's this cycle, and I'm confused, but there's things that I experience in Palestine, there's things I experience in other places, and then I have to go back and read the text and look at it again. And I'm going to share a little bit about that as we go forward, of how that process has worked out for me. How I experience something in one place, and then I go back and read the text, and I see stuff in the Bible that I didn't see before. And that's really an invitation to a method. It's an invitation to a way of being a disciple and a follower of Jesus Christ that I invite you to consider this morning. So 2 summers ago, and I'm going to read briefly some snippets from something that I've written. 2 summers ago, in the month of August, I was in the city of Najaf. So anybody know where Najaf is? It's in modern-day Iraq. Maybe you've heard about it. And I'm from Seattle, so I was dying because it was approaching 120 degrees. Walking the streets, I'd take, breathe in. It was, wow, it felt like the hairs on my face were being singed just by the heat. It was just incredible. But there I was in the city of Najaf in southern Iraq. I emptied a packet of electrolytes into my water bottle, this very one right here, hoping to fortify myself against dehydration in the desert. Now, it was the same desert that Abraham called home before he started his journey to the Promised Land. I was on my own spiritual pilgrimage with none other than Muslim friends. It was so hot. In some ways, I understand why Abraham left Ur of the Chaldees. Now, my initial steps on this path began back when I was a pastor years ago in the Seattle area, right after 9/11. In an effort to understand and love our Muslim neighbors, this is what I felt that Jesus was calling us to, I began to visit local mosques and make friends in the Muslim community. Interestingly, the first time I showed up on a Tuesday and there was nobody there. Okay, well, yeah, they do their things on Friday, so you learn these things. But I've been visiting mosques ever since. On this particular visit 2 summers ago, I had joined a group of Muslims doing the Ashra. In the Shia tradition, this is a high holy moment of pilgrimage to the shrines of important leaders from the past in Shia Islam, or in Islam and more broadly, and a deep time of lament, specifically for the martyrdom of Hussein, who they had believed in their tradition should have led them after the death of Muhammad. His tomb in, I believe it's in Karbala, is one of the holiest places in Shia Islam. One day in the middle of a 12-day pilgrimage, we paused for a visit with the Ali al-Hassan al-Sistani. Sistani is an intriguing and very important figure. Sistani is the spiritual leader of Shia Muslims from around the world, and he played a key role in the political proceedings that followed the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq in 2003. And he was an important participant in planning Iraq's first democratic government, stuff that I hadn't known, but I had to discover as I began to research and understand who this person was. It would be easy for an American to stereotype him, this person, this very, very formidable figure in present-day Iraq. He had a long beard, and he wears a turban. And some clerics have said, in general, more generally, have said inflammatory things about U.S. foreign policy in the region. This is who we were sitting with. But you need to know that I also have said inflammatory things about U.S. foreign policy in that region. So we're good. Sistani's audience has included Pope Francis and Secretary General of the United Nations, and it was remarkable that we were able to meet with him, that a citizen of the U.S. who dropped a lot of bombs on the country of Iraq, that I would be received with genuine hospitality and offered tea. Sistani lives in a modest home in Najaf, where we took refuge from the blistering heat for conversation together. We were a group of 15 people and this person. I was impressed by his humility. Muslim members in our group began to ask him questions and petition him for good health and God's blessing in their own lives. And one asked him, after some of these routine questions, Sistani, what is the greatest lesson you've learned from your life's experience? Can you imagine we're sitting there, this person who has seen so much and done so much and been integral to their own identity as Muslims. They're asking him, he was 92. At that point, he had seen 17 years of conflict in the country and was witnessing some of the most brutal acts of violence in his own land, known as the Fertile Crescent. It's that same place between the Tigris and Euphrates. Sistani pondered for a minute after the person posed the question, and this is what Sistani said. He leaned over. He's 94 now. He's kind of weak, but the clarity of his voice and the conviction of what he said just pierced through our group, our hearts. He said, first of all, three things. Be good to all people, as they are your siblings in faith or equals in humanity. Help those you encounter in whatever capacity you can. And lastly, cultivate good character in your interactions with others, even if they do not reciprocate. That was deep, rich wisdom. As Sistani's aides, he shared, and they were trying to manage the time so we could exit, because at that age, how many conversations, deep conversations, can you have with tourists, even if they're spiritual, religious tourists? So, as we were gathering and kind of ready to exit, our group's leader, who was the guide for the group, Dr. Lakayet Takim, who's a friend and he teaches at McMaster in Toronto, he turned to me and in front of the whole group he said, "Reverend," because I was the unique Christian among them. They knew me as a reverend, as a pastor, as someone who is in the Christian tradition. This guy, Dr. Takim, said, "Reverend, that sounds a lot like Jesus Christ." A resume of those 3 points that Sistani had made. As we headed for the exit, one of Sistani's handlers pulled me aside. He picked me out of the group, recognizing me as an outlier in this group of Muslim pilgrims. He asked me several questions. Who was I? Why did I come to Iraq? Acting as a translator, Dr. Takin came into that conversation. He said, well, this is a Christian brother who came to learn and to pay respects to our leaders, both living and those who have gone on before. There was a cluster of 3 or 4 of us there, and one of the handlers, one of his assistants, reached and grabbed my arm, and I just felt this bond, this connection, this deep, heartfelt affection and respect and gratitude that I would come and visit, that I would come to learn, that I would come to see and understand both his faith, but also what was important in the country of Iraq presently. Well, there I was. A member of Sistani's staff reached, grabbed my arm, gave me a warm embrace, and we lingered for a few moments in what I felt was a very holy space. And then another staff member came out with a gift for me. He handed me a ring from the Ayatollah Sistani as a remembrance and to thank me for my visit. Gift giving is important in the Arab cultures, and I was singled out that day as one wording their warm and generous hospitality. Lastly, in my ministry, I found that Christian perspectives toward Muslims are too often shaped by fear and suspicion. Our churches are susceptible to America's growing Islamophobia. And it is incumbent upon us to learn and to lean into the teachings of Christ instead of being molded by the prevailing norms in our own culture. Just take a deep breath with me for a minute. I need it too. So I just want to grab another chapter that was quite a bit earlier. In fact, in 1988, probably some of you were not born yet in this room, so I'm here standing as I'm approaching 70, but in 1988, I was commissioned to be what we called back then a missionary to Mexico. And they were commissioning me to be a church planner and to evangelism. And I entered that with great vigor, with great sense of conviction. This is what God was calling me to. And so we went to Costa Rica and studied Spanish for a whole year, and then landed in Monterrey, Mexico, and began just building relationships in the community. But the way things happen as you learn, there's experiences that you have over here, and then you reflect on them later, and you think, who was I there? What was going on? What motivated me? What were the assumptions I had in that space and in that time? And now at this point, and I want to be careful here, I don't want to be too critical because I went with good motives. I went to love people for Jesus. But I began to realize in short order that there was this package that I was carrying with me, especially as a white evangelical in Mexico, largely Catholic Mexico. And this is how I would characterize the assumption. It was, seek first the kingdom of white American evangelicalism and individual justification by faith. We need to get people saved. We need to get them into heaven. We need to get them into our church so that they can learn all the stuff of, what it means to be a Christian follower of Christ. Well, we were successful initially. We gathered a group of people, kind of starters for a church plant. And guess what happened within a year? That church split. And guess what the issue was? It was a conflict between Calvinism and Arminianism. For some other leaders in that church, we weren't preaching enough predestination. So that broke me. And I thought at that point, I need to leave this whole project of building evangelical fiefdoms or evangelical franchises in Mexico. And so we picked up the pieces, we kept growing, we kept trying to do what we were supposed to be doing in that time, but it was changing in my mind, and I was confused. I was deeply, deeply confused. I was broken. If we could go to the slide, just a few more slides, because our time's moving fast. If we could move to the one with the Sermon on the Mount in Spanish, pictures from Iraq. Here we go. So you see the highlights in pink. So this is the Bible that I would speak out, I would preach out, I would read in Mexico as we were doing our work of building a church in that place. But there was this thing that happened, and as I began to read the scripture, it was a surprise. So it says here in the 5th line down there, bienaventurados, which means blessed. Los que tienen hambre, those who are hungry and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. But the word there, look at what it says. It says justice. So open up your English Bible if you have them, or maybe this afternoon, and see what the word is. It's different. The word is different in English translations. And my own formation was reading the Sermon on the Mount and reading scriptures and finding not the word justice, but the word righteousness. And there's this really sad dynamic, and now I don't want you to be so mad at the English Bible that just throw it out, because there's still some value here. We can read it and we can learn. But a very important, significant nuance here is that in the original Greek, the feeling carries, as Dr. B said back in May, that there's justice and there's also righteousness. But I was curious, why was this justice in my Spanish Bible, but it was righteousness in my English Bible? So I've done research on this, and you should know that the King James version has influenced all English translations. So I thought, King James? Is this like King Brother LeBron James? Who is this person, and what was going on there? So King James had an interest in how the King James Bible would be brought to England way back when. And there's this very, very important thing, and we're going to wind up here and land this plane soon. But he had, so King James sought to create a unified church that could bridge the gap between various factions, including Puritans and Anglicans. And so he commissioned a group of scholars. But interestingly, the new translation was also intended to reinforce the authority of the monarchy in the Church of England. So while King James did not directly translate the Bible, he set guidance to ensure that the translation would reflect the episcopal structure of the Church of England and avoid controversial annotations. So I don't know about you, but me growing up and me going and serving as a missionary, I really did feel that the focus of my priority was to win people to Jesus Christ, to bring them into the church, to get them ready for heaven. And there was very little sense of what that meant or the implication of that for those who would come into that space, for their neighbors, for their enemies, for those that they did not know who were outside of their community. So it's a long journey for me to kind of come to grips with this dilemma and this problem and how we even read our Bibles. But thank God for Quest as a church where justice is central. It's not something that's appended to this text that we read, but it's become, and I think it's better use of the Bible, better working with the actual text that we read. Lastly, I want to close, and then we're going to go to communion here soon. If we could go to the slide of the Muslim cleric. Just before that one, yeah. So back in the mosque in one of my visits a couple years ago, the imam, who's now a friend, I know the community fairly well, he was preaching a sermon that was quoting an Iranian theologian who was critiquing Christianity. And so I'm, all ears. This is interesting. This could be like, yeah, we have to have a conversation after you preach the sermon, for sure. But interestingly, what he said was that Christians are interested in the afterlife and getting ready for heaven, having their sins forgiven. Period. And what I've come to learn in the mosque and in Muslim spaces is we believe different things about God, but they believe very intently on justice and on living what you believe. And so they talk about orthopraxy, we talk about orthodoxy. They bring and bridge those together in their own traditions. Well, I was friends with this particular imam, and so I went up and said, hey, that was a great sermon. I actually said that because I believed it. And there I was in that space, and it was quite interesting to be sharing a space and agreeing with my Muslim friend on this issue and the critique of Christianity. Well, in closing, it reminded me of reading Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who very important in my early formation in seminary and early reading was, he critiqued what we would see and understand as easy discipleship, of conversion without the cross, of Christianity without Jesus, of this easy believism that does not have any impact on us. So they were preaching the same things in many ways. Our time is closing, so I want to read to you a poem. And this is, I read this week, and I don't know if you know the etymology of the word gauze, the bandages. M. Barry wrote this recently, observing what is going on in Gaza. This morning I learned the English word gauze, finely woven medical cloth, comes from the Arabic word gaza. Because Gazans have been skilled weavers for centuries. I wondered then, how many of our wounds have been dressed because of them? And how many of theirs have been left open because of us? Thanks for listening to my musings and parts of my journey. I think God has called us to bridge and to see people that our culture, our world doesn't want us to see. Places in the world where we have done the shock and awe or supported the shock and awe, and we have not been shocked ourselves. We have not been shocked. And that's an indictment on a Christianity that, I don't know about you, I can't abide by anymore. Jesus invites us into a different space. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Amen.